Yesterday we traveled through time and geography to understand the ambivalences of liberation and solidarity, or solidarities, in this complex mosaic called world. Charlotte Wiedemann showed the simultaneity of oppression and supposed self-proclaimed liberation and their manifold intertwinedness. Also aid and the promise of progress go hand in hand with oppression and are deeply embedded in the ambivalences of modernity. Aid and aid cuts have been already mentioned a couple of times in the preceding panels. The cutting of aid as the killing of empathy in order to further be able to forget the reality of the costs of living. The most can live here in the minority world, aka, or also known as Global North or South or West. So I'm using the term minority world in the coming panel. Aid indeed, and indeed, the reporting on the aid cuts was interesting. The minority world that is losing its moral compass and the wretched receivers of this aid who now are left to die. Blurred out was, or were, the deep flaws of that morality and its political implications. Left out were the perspectives of the majority world beyond being, again, either victims or simply unworthy lives in the new world order that takes pride in its rationalization of who deserves to live and who doesn't, in that case beyond geography, outside and inside of different spheres of the globe that now does not have to be concealed. 1945 and 1955 do mark points of culmination of world change. We are too, in some extent, living through an irreversible change of the world. But how deep are those ruptures really? And how can we rethink aid and solidarity if we take a more complex look at this mosaic of world from the majority world and the margins, maybe, of the minority world that Fanon was calling upon when saying exiting Europe, a Europe maybe beyond Europe, as Heidi quoted yesterday. My name is Radwa Khaled-Ibrahim. I am responsible for transformative aid, kritische Hilfe. It's translated from German, kritische Hilfe, transformative aid in English, at Medico International, and have really the pleasure to speak today with Lian Gogali and Aram Ziai. As I said before, this is going to be a conversation rather, and we will probably agree more than disagree. And then we open the floor for you to also be part of that conversation, and of course you can disagree. Lian Gogali is our year-long partner from Indonesia, and we already heard yesterday what very important role in the global archipelago, the Indonesian archipelago, plays, Bandung and beyond. She is the co-founder of the Institut Mosintuwu, an Indonesian women's rights and peace activist, researcher and author. She is, as I said before, the founder of Institut Mosintuwu, which translates into working together in local Pamona language. This is a grassroots organization that campaigns for the economic, social, cultural, civil and political rights of the community in the post-conflict region of Poso in central Sulawesi. Aram Ziai, and Aram is probably a known face for many, is a professor of development and post-colonial studies at the University of Kassel, and he's also member of the Bundeskoordination Internationalismus, known as BOKO, and also one of the members and I think also founders of Kassel Postkolonial. Yes. We have actually many kind of connections. With Lian Gogali, we organized 4 years ago the series decolonizing aid, planetary solidarity beyond aid, and in some extent I would say this panel is a continuation of that series, especially because we tried, or we thought we had answers, maybe the beginnings of answers in that series, and now it seems like maybe the questions have changed. And also with Aram, we have a long-standing history through Medico. Aram is also the director of the GPN, the Global Partnership Network, in which there is also a long year trial to understand and rethink and reshape relations of, or transnational relations, also thinking from and beyond the minority and majority world. So I think we are having a very rich panel already, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussion. And we'll jump into the first question, actually. We have spoken about ruptures, about changes, about shifts in the last panels and the last weeks, really, and months. So I want to ask you, and I will start with you, Lian, if you would like to. When we look again from Indonesia, from maybe Poso / also Bandung, what are the changes that you are seeing? How do these ruptures look like if we look from there?
So if to answer this question actually is kind of make me think more about what do you mean about the changes in the changes itself, because I come from Indonesia, where we are already experienced these situations before, a long time ago. We start with the authoritarianism during the Suharto times, and now we are ended up with the militarism. And since I also come from Poso, Central Sulawesi, another island, not Java, not Bali, we also experience many layers of situations where we have a communal conflict, we have a terrorist attack, we also have exploitation of the natural resources. We are all on that kind of situations, and we in that kind of experience, when the question comes, I think that there is nothing is changed. It's already there. The authoritarianism, the militarism, the natural resources exploitations is already there, all with the term of the patriarchal and things like that one. But it will be looks like it's changed if we look in the maybe Western perspective, because now it seems like it's close to the Western conditions, which for us is like it's really if I may say, it's really strange, because like it means like for a long time, when we experience all the militarism, the authoritarianism, and so on, you don't experience then, and you don't feel, you don't feel that you are part of this, that you are part of this kind of situation that make us feel like that, or make us experience that one. There is kind of like a separations, and the feeling of the separation between what we experience and what we are experience in really like a small country, and also small regions, with the feeling and the responsibility that you have. So I think in our way of thinking, actually the things that happening now is only in terms of it's more feasible and it's more vulgar in some terms, and then and it becomes more seems like close, because you now then thinking about what is your role in this kind of situations, if you will think about what is your role. Otherwise, like you still think that this is only the sudden change. But for us, it's not a sudden change. It's already there, but it's more visible and more vulgar. And And in that sense, I think like we also in that kind of situations actually we are not only fight to change the situations, but also we trying to look again how the people outside us, in these terms, but you choose the word of majority people. It seems the way how they see us. I think I will stop in that way. So I will let people to like maybe think about are we also really change, or we only not realize that there is there already. And in this sense, I think I'm thinking about that when we know that there is situations like that. The first things that we need to do is, I think, is to acknowledge that there is a situation like that, and the acknowledgement means that we know that we have a role on to creating these kind of situations.
Yes, I also am not sure how massive these changes are if we are taking this global perspective. Of course we have the shift to the right, and of course, as Charlotte Wiedemann has explained, the public debate is terribly shifting towards the right wing. But from the global perspective, I'm not really sure, because the catastrophe is already there all the time. According to the World Health Organization, every single day, 20 to 30,000 people are dying for lack of food, for lack of medicine, for lack of clean water. Against this backdrop, the dismantling of USAID, well, is a bad thing, and it will affect NGOs, progressive NGOs especially. And I don't want to say this is nothing we should talk about. We should. But I think we could put it in perspective. So, and from this global perspective, I've calculated last year, so we have actually a net transfer from the poor countries to the rich countries, which amounts to 1,500 billion US dollars each year. So even if we cut all of development aid, well, it will be 200 more. So this is the perspective I think we should take, and not to engage in overly dramatic scenarios. So I think what does shift is that basically now, with Trump's new right-wing politics, fascist politics, one can say, what is being abandoned is the promise, the liberal promise of development aid. Because so far, since the Second World War, we always had the situation that the rich countries were saying, oh yes, there is global inequality, but hang on, we're doing something about it. We're providing development aid. And just wait a bit, in a few decades you will be fine. Of course, after a few decades, no one was fine, so the problem was not solved, but then they always came up with, okay, but next time we'll manage. First development decade, second development decade, third development decade, Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm sure this can go on. But this is now crumbling. So apparently the liberal promise is now being abandoned in terms of a less shameful attitude of, okay, then we leave you to die and that's okay. So this is what Trump and Elon Musk seem to be saying, as we heard also this morning regarding a war on empathy. So I think yes, these are the changes that we're facing, but we're facing them against the backdrop of an enduring daily catastrophe anyways.
So, an ongoing catastrophe, at the same time, not much has changed in the sense of maybe we can also look at those changes in the minority world and how to, you were saying, put them into perspective. So if we try to put them into perspective through the experience that you were talking about, Lian, the experience of militarization, the experience of authoritarianism, and so on, how can we put them into perspective that we make them, or we understand them better in the sense of to link them to the further or wider global perspective?
We are thinking about to look at the axis of the changes or the shift, and then we at least from our experience, it's always about the resources. The resources, I mean, is not only about the natural resources, but also the knowledge, the resources of knowledge, where there is a process of control on this kind of resources. There is a power of control which shape in the terms of the militarism and authoritarianism and so on. And this in these terms, it will be bring to the consequences that we are now experience in all over the world, which is the climate crisis. So the climate crisis, and that's everyone's now experience, is come to the will of this regime of authoritarianism and militarism to have control on this issue. They are like the natural resources and also the knowledge itself. So if you ask about like how then we processing on that, in our experience at least, we trying to not I could not say not influence, but we trying to look at the how we define ourselves in the beginning. So I told before that we of course we acknowledge first about what's going on and so on, and after that we define. I will give an example like this. So since I'm come from the conflict area, and in the conflict area we are actually the background is the political and economic interest, but they use the religions to mobilize people to fight and hate and also kill each other. So there is more than 500 persons die and 1,000 people flee to the jungle. That's what's happened in my regions, and people fight and fight to each other under the name of the religions, and the terrorists attack camp. In these situations, the media and the government, including the humanitarian aid, trying to redefine us. I mean, trying to define us as a people based on the crisis that we experience. So when we ask about who we are, they will identify us as a people in the conflict, as a people in the terrorist attack, as a people in the crisis. So that's how the definition of us, and this will be following by the definition about what kind of peace building, what kind of peace we should have, what kind of development we should have if we experience that one. And this will be defined not by us, but defined by of course, by the military, by the state, by the humanitarian aid, including the humanitarian aid. And to break down all of this and then to criticize this, in our experience, we start with the reclaim back our identity. Reclaim, it means that we want to have our own imagination about our world, about the world we live in. We want to have our own identity who not defined by the crisis or who not defined by even the humanitarian aid. So in this way, so then we can find a way to have the sustainable fight, and then we can also have our own dignity, yeah, in this sense. Yeah.
Thanks. So, and if I now see that initiatives like yours, peace-building initiatives, or also the work of Medico International, of course, this is also funded by development aid. So I think in this respect, I would like to borrow from Medico the three-pronged approach. So we should defend development aid against the right-wing attacks, because parts of it are very valuable. However, we should also criticize development aid because of its Eurocentric paternalist features. We should also criticize it because each year, due to development projects, 10 to 15 million people are being displaced, lose their livelihoods. And we should also criticize development aid because it is actually a fig leaf in a global capitalism that is producing massive inequality and massive suffering. But people always point to development aid, yeah, but we're doing something about it. Well, you're doing something about it on the minor stage while you're robbing people on the major stage. And lastly, we should actually strive to overcome development aid with the perspective to a world beyond these ideas of development. Everyone has to become like the West. There are development experts who know how to transform societies. We should leave all this behind, and we also need to abandon the idea that this model of society that we're having, that this is actually something positive. On the contrary, it's an imperial mode of living which can survive only on the basis of colonial plunder in the past, and until today can survive only because of the cheap labor and the cheap resources exported from elsewhere. So this is something, and I think this is here for Germany or for many other countries as well in the global north, and also for the middle classes in the BRICS countries. This is the hardest part, actually, to acknowledge, okay, we actually cannot go on living like that with our laptops, cars, flights, etc. if we want to take the idea of global justice seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I to criticize the development aid because in our understanding based on the experience, because the conflict itself is started in 1998 and only stopped quote to quote in 2015, and we think that yes, the aid itself should be grounded in the discourse of the power and space and political economy, because otherwise it will be seen that the aid is part of only your pity that this has happened to us, not as a part of the social justice. And if that's happened, so it means that you are actually it's also part of the colonialists. So it's the aid itself aims to help, but actually it's part of the act of the colonialized from the mindset itself, and then it will be result to the form of the what kind of aid that the humanitarian aid give. I will give an example like during the every time when there is a conflict or there is a disaster happen, for example, there is like a big earthquake, tsunami, and liquefaction in Central Sulawesi after the in Palu in these terms. Many people drop the aid, and all the aid is like we think like how we use this, we cannot use this, but we should use this, because if we don't use this one, so they feel that we don't feel thankful for the aid. I will make an example, because they give us the food that we not recognize. What kind of food is this? And it's make us lose our identity and the culture in the same times when the humanitarian aid come. So that's what I really want to continue this the conversation of how we need to criticize also the aid itself and redefine again what kind of aid that we need to give, and then in these terms that what is actually the mindset of behind the aid.
And the mindset behind the aid is, well, you lack something, you are less developed, and we help you to develop. I mean, picture this. After 500 years of colonial plunder, which is so massive that for reparations, there would be not enough money in the world, as some clever guy at LSE has calculated. Against this backdrop, they're saying, oh, you're poor in Indonesia, oh yes, you are less developed than we are. You're still somehow backward. But we know what development is and how to get there, so we help you. We send development experts, and we send some money and some technology, and we'll teach you. I mean, what arrogance is behind this mindset? To not acknowledge the colonial plunder and then assume, oh, these people are backward, that's why they're poor. Oh, let's go help them. How nice of us. So this is the mindset.
Yeah, and I will continue that this kind of mindset is also depoliticize the suffering of the people in the situation, and also depoliticize also the fight of the survivor, and the way how it's defined even the word of victim, if there is conflict or the disaster, there will be a word of the victim, and the way how it's also defined the victims is only as victims, not only the survivor who trying to fight to processing and going through all of this situation. It will be also influence the way how you think about the others in this terms of aid.
Now, you were, allow me to just join you also. You were both pointing out how aid also was a form of power, a form of power relation and a form of persisting on power relations that were already kind of installed in colonial terms and continued. And now we see that there's, what is proclaimed, as you said, in a very vulgar and very visible way, is exactly saying, well, you know what? We used to care, and we don't care anymore. In the sense of, we want to be, you want to be developed, well, it's okay. You want to be developed, well, there is now, you can, you don't have to ask us even. In the sense of, we do development aid for our geopolitical interests, that's written in the new coalition agreement, and point blank. So this kind of whole discourse, because now we're speaking from the minority world out, is shifting, is changing, and as you said, is being vulgarly pointed out as, yes, it was part of the show as well. So, how to proceed from there now?
Okay, how to proceed from there would be the question, okay, what alternatives do we have? And I think we can talk about alternatives in terms of the global economy, in terms of global trade, etc. But we could also talk about alternatives from the grassroots upwards, from the local communities which are organizing themselves. And this very morning we heard here on the panel about this book, Paradise Built from Hell, dealing with the aftermath of Katrina, of the hurricane in the US East Coast, where people in the wake of this hurricane, started to organize themselves, started to help each other, started to build up networks of solidarity. And this phenomenon is not unique. You had it in Mexico City, where there was a massive earthquake in 1985, but people started building up the city, the barrios themselves, because there was no state looking after them. We had it in the Greek financial crisis, where there was also terrible situations being dealt with by the neighborhoods themselves, organizing networks of solidarity. Again, starting with subsistence agriculture in their gardens. So we have the situation that everywhere where the crisis hits, people don't just wait for the state to help them, people organize themselves. And this is something that might give us hope, that basically people are able to do so. Even when we're talking about the Corona crisis, here in Germany, suddenly neighbors started to knock at each other's doors, saying that, okay, I know for you it's difficult, you are 75, can I maybe support you? Can I go shopping for you? Can I bring something for you? So these, or even the summer of migration 2015, people started to support the migrants, not because the state organized them, but because civil society organized itself. And this is something that might give us hope that even beyond the parameters of politics that we know, the state, the parameters of economics, of the economy that we know, capitalism and the homo economicus, beyond that there are alternatives, and people are capable of doing that. People are doing it. And maybe this is something that we could take on as a starting point for building up a world where basically your survival would not depend on either the state catering for you or you being actually employable on the market to an extent that you can survive. That would be my hope.
So I will continue about the alternative movement by first maybe tell my feeling about to listen that in some extent the world now seems like only see the big narrative of from Trump and Elon Musk and make this as a reference of the world that we're living in, which is we trying to like say not, but we trapped in this kind of narrative, and to make this the alternative movement, we really need to start with our new narrative. What is the word that we would like to have? How we redefine our word outside from the way how Trump, Elon Musk trying to define us. Like we need to deconstruct the world that they want to have for us to live in that kind of world. Otherwise, like I think we are just trapped in this kind of power, the language power, like because we're just following the narrative. Actually, before lunch, I asked Henrik what about the situation, about my feeling, that feeling, and he told me the news of the news in the current news now in Japan, and it's all about am I sabotaged? Very much. Very much. I feel that. So I mean, like when we want to create the alternative movement, and also we need to deconstruct the word that trying to give to us with this big narrative from US and so on. And when I saw the news in this morning about in Germany, is all dominant from the news from Putin, USA, and it's all there in Germany newspaper. And I say, is it Germany like construct themselves as a nation and as a citizen by this narrative. Like, and then I follow in the really small news is another news from the other minority world. What I would like to say is like, in our experience, when we redefine, when we define by the military, the government and humanitarian aid, the way how we trying to set up the alternative movement is reclaim first. We reclaim and deconstruct, and then we trying to have our own way of thinking. And the way how we do that, we also deconstruct the meaning of the aid, and the meaning of the solidarity, and the meaning of power. And we come to the conclusion that the power, which usually by the majority world, country, state, see that the power is money, financial, and scientists, more scientist things. No, it's not. It's not. The power that we need to redefine in our own way, which we come from several things. May I mention? So first is about the language. We come to the understanding that even the language of development itself, and the language of the way how usually people say it as empowering people, because this is like a really favorite word or language in many countries to talk about the other country, empowering people. It seems like the word that have the power only for the people who have this kind of privilege. So we redefine and deconstruct this language by look at our own language to define what we mean with the power itself. And the power is not only tunggal. It's not only one. And the power needs to be sharing. And the way how we share the power, it means that we need to strengthen into each other. And that's how we come to the word of pakaroso. So we criticize the word of the empowering, which the people have like more like power relations to the others, becomes more pakaroso, means strengthening to each other. And the second one is the alternative movement that you already mentioned. I think is about the networking. The networking is to give information, to support, and then to know that in some extent there are so many people can also support you, like you already explained before. And in this sense, I think we can also refer to what the panel before said, the war on empathy, that we can like break this down with this network, with a network of empathy that we can also build. The other one is the story. We look at the story. The story, why story for us is really as part of the alternative work, because the story is part to change the dominant narrative, the dominant discourse. If you don't have your own story, so it will be the other story will occupy your story and make your own stories being silenced. And the other one is like the voluntarism. Yeah. So the voluntarism is also part of the alternative work. And from my understanding, all the people here is also work for so many years to volunteering, support medico, and then in this sense they also support the grassroots movement in many different countries. And the language. I will talk about the language because I think the language has a power, but we talk more about the local language. The local language which for us is really, really close with the nature. Usually, the knowledge that now more scientific. I don't say that the scientific is bad, but it's more in sense of that some of the scientists more masculine, which obey the connection between the human and the nature. So I will end with the say that to say that to redefine the eight maybe will bring us with the new alternative grassroots movement or the movement itself, but also bring us to the new concept of solidarity.
Yeah, I always want to answer and pick up something that you said. Yeah, and I think so. We need these networks of solidarity and these networks of political struggles. But we also need these new conceptualizations. So new conceptualizations of our relations, but also, as you mentioned, of our relation to nature. And I think this is also a crucial element, because in the wake of modern science, we have been taught that basically nature is that matter, and we have to learn its laws in order to exploit it, make it workable. And this has been done then in the past centuries without any inhibiting, without any idea of, oh, this is actually God's creation, it's sacred, we should not be doing it. No, 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 that was after the Enlightenment, that was actually stuff of the past, and it emerged what we call the anthropocentric worldview. Human beings are in the middle and are all that is important. And even when it started in early modernity, some people objected against it. Said, oh no, we should not be digging up the earth and drag all the valuables and destroy nature, etc. And this is also what we then, and this was in Europe even, and this is what we find until today also in indigenous communities all over the world, where basically we have these struggles over extractivism, how much exploitation of nature do we have to engage in, and how much is too much. But it is still, it's always on the basis that we are allowed to, we can decide about this. And this is something where I think in order to get away from this destructive imperial mode of living, we maybe need to rethink our relation to nature. And what I found very encouraging is when I was engaging in the protests against coal mining, which is actually also a protest against the imperial mode of living, there were banners saying, "We are nature defending itself," which is a different mindset from, oh, we noble human beings have to protect the poor nature and the poor animals. No, we are actually part of what we're defending. So, and this I found very encouraging, and maybe a step into this direction and away from, yeah, from the Eurocentric mindset that I was brought up with.
May I continue with this? Because it's really interesting. Thank you for mentioning about like how we need to also relate with the nature, and then I think that deconstruct the world is also it means that we need also deconstructing our mindset to the nature, because the capitalism system is make us separate ourselves from the nature and make us feel more have a control to the nature. And in this sense, I will tell a story that in our local community, we fight against the hydropower electricity, which campaign as a green energy, which is not. And then the hydropower electricities, we have a really beautiful lake, really big, beautiful lake. And then the beautiful lake is for the dictionary and for the company and the government. Always see the lake is on the source of the water. So it's absolutely legal to exploit. That's what they think. But for people, for indigenous people, no, it's not only a source of water. The lake is, we have a local language to say the lake in terms of like a sira. Sira is S-I-R-A. Is in translations will be Her Majesty. So we see the lake as a part of, not only a part of ecosystem, but the ecosystem itself, the one who construct our culture and construct ourselves. They are the one who shape us. They are the one who like make us like this one. So I will have another example because this is really interesting. Oh, to the floor. Okay, sorry. I will stop. Yeah. So one simple example about how we reconnect with the nature when we want to cut the trees. When we want to cut the trees, we need to ask permissions not only to the trees, but also the whole ecosystem in the trees. The way how we'll do it, we put it stairs in the trees to ask if we can have to cut the trees. And this kind of things is a dialogue between the human and also the nature, so they are not separated us.
I think we will have a lot of questions and remarks from the audience, and maybe to kind of, I want just to back to one point actually to open it with the floor with, that I really found very interesting, how you conceptualize the necessity actually of to look from the margins of quote-unquote the minority world to connect to a that there's a necessity actually to do that, if not only for a claim of justice, not only for a claim of solidarity, but actually as a claim to be part of the world which Europe is now kind of drifting away, as we have heard multiple times in the preceding panels. So Abdallah has a question, and you also there. Okay, Nathanael, you can.
Yeah, I will be very short. To pick up from that last point that you just shared, maybe it could be some different perspective. International aid is intended to help the vulnerable communities in those countries, in Africa, in Asia, whatsoever. But when the same development aid is channeled through the powerful people in the government, and when you find NGOs are partnering with government officials, autocratic officials in the government, because they want recognition, they want legitimacy, they want registration, protection, and the aid is not going directly to the people, or maybe less than 5% of the donations and funding is going directly to the beneficiaries, and the rest is going to bureaucracy, to the government bribery, registration, big offices, salaries. Isn't this a problem? And what do you, as a panel, I think maybe you haven't addressed this thing, but as a journalist, I was one of a group of local journalists who have been following this and trying to document. And for several cases, we have been threatened for doing this. In the middle of the Mogadishu, Somalia, I came across the nutritious food intended for young children under 5, which were sold on the streets. And I took photos of that, and I put on online to track down. And the next day I went to buy it so that I can check it. It had the German flag, and this was a donation given to WFP. In 5 days I got a request from WFP person who said they wanted to talk to me about this, and then we had a long discussion, and they promised that they will investigate. They never investigated. It's now 5 years ago. Such things when you see, what do you think? That's what I wanted to add. Maybe it can be a question or comment. Thank you.
I would like to ask your thoughts, because I think there's one topic we touched upon a bit, but there's a lot of potential if we think about it, if you think about it. Lian, you mentioned how do we deconstruct the world that Trump and Musk and whatnot is creating for us, and we talked a lot about capitalism and how capitalism is extracting the resources. So I would like to shift our perspective to what is now called surveillance capitalism, right? And how is capitalism is actually now exploiting one of our most important resources, which is attention. And then at the same time, how now the big tech companies are lining up with the far right and behind Trump. And I think there's a lot of dangerous potential through the use of social media and the world which is created through algorithms, and how this is also actually influencing how we see the world, how we use our attention, how we perceive problems generally, and how we can push back or what to do about it, right?
Ich habe eine Frage an Lian. Ich weiß über Indonesien relativ wenig. Wir sind hier in einem Land, in dem eine Entnazifizierung eigentlich nicht stattgefunden hat, also das Wort nicht verdient. Ich habe einen Dokumentarfilm gesehen über Indonesien, in dem einzelne Folterer unter Suharto berichteten, wie sie in Indonesien gewütet haben. Wie ist es möglich, dass solche Leute auftreten können und im Fernsehen auftreten können und scheinbar unbehelligt ihre Berichte abgeben können? Vielleicht eine Information, die ich mich freuen würde, wenn du mir das sagen könntest.
You were reporting about a case of corruption in development aid, which is also not unique. And if we look at development aid, we will find projects motivated by geopolitical interests. Maybe they actually wanted to please the heads of state and had some deals with them, and this was the rule, not the exception, in the Cold War. During the Cold War, you might remember Mobutu, the head of state of Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo, who was there through military coup and who basically amassed $5 billion as private wealth on the basis of corruption of development aid. And throughout this period, he was supported by the West, according to the old saying attributed to some US president. Well, of course he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. Well, this, of course, is politically incorrect language, for which I apologize, but this is the type of thinking that dominated the period during the Cold War. And after that, it is still sometimes the case that there are geopolitical motivations behind development aid. There are other projects of development aid where there is an economic motivation behind it. But there are also these humanitarian projects of development aid, which we also encounter. And yeah, and in these contexts, we will then also find cases where humanitarian aid is directed at the poor but never reaches the poor. But this would only be one of the problems that we see with development aid. So even if there were only humanitarian projects, and even if there was no corruption, we still would be encountering the problems of paternalism, etc., of Eurocentrism. And yeah, so that is why we think, okay, yes, we need to defend it, but we also need to criticize it, and in the end we need to overcome it.
I would like first to start with the question of Suharto, because the current president of Indonesia is the son of law of Suharto. And then I will back to the 1965. In 1965, there is a mass killing to the more around 2 million people of Indonesia under the name of anti-communism, as part of anti-communism movement during the political coup during the time by the Suharto. And then I would like to acknowledge that some of the reason, there is many analysis about why then Prabowo won, but in one of my thing is that the Indonesian government, including many of Indonesia, not yet recognize and acknowledge this mass killing. That during the mass killing of 65, 2 million people die, and it's set up where the people is killing their neighborhood under the narrative of anti-communism. And this is not yet recognized by the state itself, but also trying to hide under the carpet by the Indonesian people also. So, and then it's in this last 2-3 years, this is make use by the capitalism to shape us in the term of what we call as nationalism, Indonesian nationalism, to prevent us from what they so-called by the government of Indonesia, the asing, the foreigner, to influence the Indonesia. And to make this work is they need to bring up again this kind of narrative from 65. So there is a narrative from the government, from the state and military to offer to Indonesian citizens that the 1965 incident is the PKI or the anti-communist. There is the anti-communist movement, so the people legally can kill because of that. And then what the government didn't talk about is that this is part of the military coup. And then after that, when there is a Suharto fall, so 1965 Suharto took over the presidential, and then after 32 years of his presidential, there's a fall of Suharto in 1998. There's a big demonstration during the time, but I think we are not really processing this incident in 65. We are not really open up to even like acknowledge and recognize this publicity, and also to ask for forgiveness. Not even we just like hiding behind the what we call as a reformations. And this is so fragile because we are hiding in this kind of incident. This is so fragile when the issue of nationalism comes. That's why the issue of nationalism comes, and then the Prabowo one, and we go back again to the regime now. And to make it more sad, Indonesia just passed a military law this year. The military law give opportunity for the active military to have the position in the government. So the active military could be the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and so on and so on. So it means they not only control on the security, but also they control on the state. So we are going back to the dark times, actually. So, yeah. Oh, the surveillance capitalism. I don't know if I can answer that, but what we're trying to do, at least as part of our alternative movement, is to create the citizen journalism. So the citizen journalism is a part of the way how we trying to have our own voice. And we have a community radio, and the community radio speak a lot about our own voice, our own struggle, and so on and so on. And we have this as our movement to also organize people in the village. So our community radio is listening by 21 villages around the Lake Poso, and it's like of course we put it our own narrative and can mobilize people. And this citizen narrative, citizen journalism, I think is really more needed now. And then I think the support, the radio is also supported by Medico, and I think this kind of citizen journalism is also need more attentions to make the way of the work of the construct our work, the work, and through the narrative, alternative narrative will be possible and more visible. Yeah, otherwise we will only trap in the mainstream media, while the journalists also get attacked. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not on social media, so I can't help you much. But I mean, what I gather, it always confirms me that it is wise to stay away from it. But when you were talking about citizen journalism, can anyone tell me what became of indie media actually? Because there was, yeah, but maybe you can say something about it. Ja, und vielleicht noch eine kurze Antwort zu der Indonesien-Frage. Ich weiß nicht, wie die Vergangenheitsbewältigung in Deutschland ausgesehen hätte, wenn es nicht einen verlorenen Zweiten Weltkrieg und eine Besatzung gegeben hätte. Und ich meine, selbst dann war es ja jahrzehntelange Arbeit, die bis heute ja auch noch nicht vorbei ist. Aber wenn man sich mal anguckt, wie das mit anderen Ländern, mit Diktaturen ist, also da sind die Widerstände noch größer. Und da trauen sich die Täter halt eben auch noch mal viel offener mit ihren Verbrechen zu prahlen.
2 Millionen Ermordete mit Unterstützung des Westens.
Ja. Und das ist vielleicht auch noch ein Satz, auch wenn es nicht hierher gehört. Das war das, was mich vielleicht am meisten wütend gemacht hat während der Documenta in Kassel 2022, wo die gesamte Berichterstattung sich fokussiert hat auf dieses Gemälde von Taring Padi, was eine Kritik war an der indonesischen Suharto-Diktatur, an der Diktatur von dem Mörder, wo unser Bundeskanzler Helmut Kohl Zeit seines Lebens gesagt hat, ja, das ist mein Freund, Suharto. Ich habe keinen Artikel gefunden, wo das mal thematisiert wurde, und es gab hunderte Artikel über den Antisemitismus-Skandal auf der Documenta.
We'll take one more round. I see Charlotte in the back. Charlotte Wiedemann. No? Okay, here.
Entschuldigung, dass ich mich schon wieder melde. Also eine Frage, die sich ja auch angesichts des Titels dieser Veranstaltung auftut und angesichts des Kampf um Aufmerksamkeit als neue kapitalistische Ressource, finde ich sehr zutreffend beschrieben. Welche Möglichkeiten gibt es jetzt für internationale solidarische Bündnisse, einmal Hilfe zu leisten, die Strukturen ganz anders und neu aufzubauen, und vor allem, die Frage nach Indie Media war ja nicht unberechtigt, andere Kommunikationsnetzwerke zu schaffen. Das scheint mir überlebenswichtig. Denn wenn wir jetzt immer noch angewiesen sind auf, ich sage jetzt mal, vergiftete Strukturen, sowohl in der Kommunikation als auch in den Geldflüssen, und den Regierungen. Ja, wie können wir verhindern, also dass das Geld, die Ressourcen, die Kraft, die Energie, die wir geben, so missbraucht und auch so kriminalisiert wird, dass wir nur noch in Abwehrkämpfen bestehen. Es wurde ja heute auch gesagt, wie viel Kraft wir brauchen, um Fake News zu entlarven. Also welche Bündnisse wären auch zwischen Organisationen, die vielleicht ähnlich handeln wie Medico, möglich? Ich weiß, das sind jetzt sehr große Fragen, die kann nicht dieses Panel beantworten, aber wenn ich den ganzen Tag rückblickend mir vor Augen halte, drängt sich das einfach auf. Und vielleicht gibt es wenigstens kleine Teilantworten.
Thank you. I wonder if you can speak to something I'm grappling with, and we talked about at lunch. What do you think should be done about the state? I myself am drawn at times to anarchist writing or decentralized or some alternative mode of organization, given how much the state is implicated in extractivism and racism and so on. And even Rebecca Solnit's work, these beautiful moments come precisely because the state collapses, and specifically the state's defense of property collapses, so that people can actually use the resources around them and redistribute them. And then it fails when the state comes back in to protect property. So, yeah, I wondered, what do you think about the state in your work?
One more question?
Ich versuche es mal auf Deutsch besser. Und ich versuche ganz kurz eine Antwort zu geben auf die vorige vergiftete Kommunikation, vergiftete Narrative. Twitter, Facebook und dergleichen haben ja auch Algorithmen, die solche Narrative fördern, diesen War on Empathy im Prinzip algorithmisch fördern. Eine Alternative wäre das sogenannte Fediverse, das ist noch nicht ausgereift, noch in Entwicklung. Mastodon als Alternative zu Twitter, was genauso gebaut ist, dass eben diese Hassnarrative nicht so durchschlagen können.
So the question regarding networking, I think this is a crucial point. We have to organize, and I felt Charlotte Wiedemann's remark yesterday. Well, actually, maybe there are even more active movements today than at the time of the World Social Forum, but they are not connected. If this is true, then this might be also a way forward. So at that time, I used to be a member of a network called People's Global Action, which was connecting grassroots movements all over the globe. And in my naive perception, we were incredibly successful, organizing global days of action where in 70 cities all over the world, on the very same day, people were protesting against neoliberal capitalism and the World Trade Organization and the IMF and the World Bank and all that shit. And yeah, and this perspective of networking is I think crucial if we want to be politically effective. And what nowadays exists is the global tapestry of alternatives. And I think this is something which is more of a post-development thing, of people who are also caring very much about relations and about nature, and but still it also seems to be, to me, it seems very effective. So I think we need to link the struggles from all over the world to not only to basically to be more politically effective, but also just to get in touch with one another and see what is going on, so not to despair when we turn when we look at the paper, when we look at the news. And Kara, thanks for your question. So now, the state. I've prepared a small lecture. No, I haven't. I'll try to be short. But historically, if we come from historical sociology, the state emerged from what we today would call a mafia. Something like, so people with swords telling you, okay, we will protect you, but you have to pay taxes. Something like that. And now, this is a complex issue, and I shouldn't be making fun of it, but nevertheless, when it comes down to it, of course, for many people, being dependent on welfare state, the state is also a means to survive. So we shouldn't be too harsh here in this context. But in the end, the state basically is the one institution which says, okay, I have the monopoly of violence in order to protect you from yourselves, and maybe also from Putin. So, and this is something where in the political philosophy following Hobbes, this is crucial, this is necessary for our survival, because human beings are wolves to other human beings if they are not reined in by some superior instance. And so it basically boils down to what conception of human beings do you have? If they are nasty, then you need the state to protect you. If they are lovely hippies, then you don't need a state to protect them. Obviously, the truth is somewhere in the middle, but the point is, human beings maybe can learn, maybe can be socialized. And I think abolishing the state like that could result in terrible results. We've been talking about Syria yesterday. So in the war in Syria, the regions which were not controlled by the state, well, on the one hand, there were the territories of Rojava, the Kurdish-controlled communities, where people were building up a democratic, non-ethnic, multi-ethnic, gender-balanced, autonomous system. But on the other hand, other regions were controlled by the Islamic State, where basically the exact opposite was being set up. So it's not that we can say, okay, abolishing the state is a great idea, but it always depends. However, I think if people can learn to relate to each other, to cooperate with one another, without resorting to violence as a means of conflict resolution, then we would not need a state. And I think without arguing, okay, yes, so tomorrow we do it, I think this is the direction that we should be taking. Because, I mean, we've seen the newspaper reports all over the place, again, some black youth being shot by the police for the how many time, I don't know. And this is the, well, this is the dark side of this institution with the monopoly of violence protecting us. And we need to be aware of that. And if we want to get rid of that, we need to go beyond that. We need to find ways of conflict resolution beyond that. We need transformative justice. We need actually to say, well, okay, then let us try to do without and with less violence. I think this is a long journey, but I think the direction would be one I would very much favor of.
I will start about the state more practical way, because we also think a lot after the reformations in 1998, we start to reimagine Indonesia again, like what we call as Indonesian. What is Indonesian as a citizen and as a part of the state? And then, of course, we all this kind of imagination as a part of the state is fall down with all the violence that, as Aram just explained before, that the state itself is part of the violence, and even like now become, for us is we familiar now to describe our government as a mafia, because as a they are actually not act as a state who protect the people as the Constitution says, but they are part of the coalition with the investor, with the military, with the backup, all of the things by using our taxes. So the way how we do it then, because we just I can say we give up with the state. So we're trying to deconstruct our mind about what kind of state we want to have. And in practical way, in my organization, we established what we call as a village reform school. So we start with the village. We're trying to occupy village first before the state. Okay. So we start with the village first to redefine what is the development we want to, how we redefine the development that usually given by the government. And then we have several villages who trying to redefine again development and the prosperity they have, and we are now working on that one. So I would like to say that through the village that we are now working on, we're trying to have our own system that work for us, that work not only in terms of protecting our rights, but also all of that happens like anti-racialism, anti-colonialism, and also by digging the identity of us as indigenous people. So we start with the village, creating our own system, and with that I think it's already a good start. And I will go to the questions of the the school that we are established is called as a village reform school, because we would like to start to reform first the village. Because the governments are usually already like have their own concept of development and put it to the village, and village has no like authority to define about what kind of development they have. It's just like same as other village. Even though Indonesia is really diverse, like we have 740 islands and more than 300 ethnicity. So like we want to like have the diversity still our own. And I want to go to the questions of the so then what is the potential transnational solidarity that we need to have? And Aram also already started with the networking. But also I imagine, I have imaginations about how then this kind of networking can link also the volunteerism and the story that we have. So we have our own story, and so then in the same times we can also respect the multi-dimensions of our struggle, that we are not, make it as a same thing, and it will be ended up with the majority things again. So we need to networking our struggle, but we also in the same times we learn from the story from each of the struggle, and in this sense we also share the knowledge that we have on each of the struggle, so that we can support each other. In this sense, I would like to say that the transnational solidarity has need to like have the word of what I call is not taking over the power from anyone, but it's to strengthening together, to strengthening our struggle together. So then that's how the solidarity I imagine.
I cannot think of better closing and opening words for this panel. I think asking we walk, as the Zapatistas say, we will ask further and continue going further with exactly those questions in mind, and maybe also this vision in mind. Solidarities that are going back and forth, that are not despite but in the differences, that see the connectedness and also as a necessity and not as a one-way street from the minority world to the majority world, as we have learned today, or heard today. I would say learned. Yes, thank you very much.